We got Senator Daniel Sparks. He represents District 5 that includes Itawamba, Prentiss, and Tishomingo Counties, serves as the chair of the Economic and Workforce Development Committee, Vice Chair, Judiciary B. Senator, always good to see you, sir. Thanks for coming in.
Thank you, Gerard. It's good to be with you as always, and I'm excited about your Mr. Givert Goes to Washington. That's amazing.
I'm still having a hard time processing it, honestly. You think about how you don't know the twists and turns your life makes. Only the good Lord knows that. I mean, how'd I go from twiddling bits in the IT world, as we say, to being part of this event? And by the way, she just sent me another text, by the way, Will, to make sure that we got the information, we're good to go, and it requested that we respond affirming we received it. So I'm super excited about this and just honored and proud and looking forward to representing the great state of Mississippi up there. We got a great story to tell, and I enjoy telling it everywhere I go, and tomorrow it will be from the Eisenhower Executive Office Building, part of the White House complex. So really cool. But, you're one of the reasons that you and all the folks who come in here as guests that make this show so great for the people of Mississippi, because we inform Mississippi here.
Well, I appreciate that, and I'm thankful for every opportunity, and being from Northeast Mississippi, which is a long way away from Jackson, SuperTalk does a great job of helping keep us informed on a regular basis. I have people all the time when I see them in the restaurant, when I'm at home, saying, "Hey, I hear you on SuperTalk," and so I really do appreciate that opportunity to share that, not just with the folks back home in my own district, but across the state of Mississippi, because there are needs, just like the Walthall County question that you have there. When we have traumatic events such as that, we have our local people on the ground, the county emergency people that work with MEMA, ultimately that work with FEMA, and all those pieces have to move. And, we don't have any control over those federal pieces moving. And that's true in so many parts of government. And as you try to serve your local communities, and I represent a rural district, I represent small municipalities, towns, even villages, as a lot of people don't realize there's a population count to be a city, a town, a village, maybe even a hamlet, but they are organized units of government, and it's difficult sometimes to keep up with what is needed at the state and federal level as far as paperwork, as far as grant programs. And that's one of the things over the weekend, and trying to work on some things related to the ARPA projects is come to my attention and made me a little concerned that as we move past this COVID pandemic period where all this federal money was pressed down to the states, you and I talked about this at length in 22, particularly when the ARPA money was being discussed on your show. Mm-hmm. And some of the things, I went back and listened to it. It was on March 17th of 22. And some of the things we said are coming to fruition now. And that's the concern, is that now all this federal money has flowed down. Have we appropriated it properly? Have we been good stewards? And have we filled out the paperwork? And in reality, my concern, and DFA, I spent time with them this morning on the phone, they're doing a great job trying to help, but DFA is not in control of this direct money that went to the cities and counties, $900 million. And so I will, when I get off the show today, I'll be making some phone calls to some municipalities in my district that are listed as non-reporters. And it may be that it just slipped past them. It may be that they didn't understand the significance of it. But there is a great danger that some of our counties and cities could have money clawed back by the federal government, and they've already spent it. And some of these figures were pretty large figures for these types of municipalities. So while we respect and need our federal partners, we have to make sure that the strings that are attached we're able to handle when we take these type of monies.
This was $1.9 trillion. It was enacted in March 21. The money started flowing after that. But you're right, there was a huge part of that included money, funds that just went directly to every city and county in America.
Correct.
And it was, as I recall, based on population.
That's correct. There was a base amount for states, and then there was a population factor, and unemployment actually had a thing to do with it as well, because I went back and was looking at the ratio. But on these municipalities and counties, it was strictly a population number. And when it started with the counties, there were all these restrictions. It was going to be infrastructure. Yeah. And there was going to be a lost revenue calculation, a very complex lost revenue calculation. And after a few months, they said, forget that. If it's under $10 million, it's all considered lost revenue if it's a county. Well, most all counties in Mississippi, the majority of them, got less than $10 million. So it was unrestricted use. So that, it's their choice. They're elected locally. They could spend that money any way they wanted to. One of the things the Lieutenant Governor championed, and we talked about it on the show, and the Senate brought forth, was a match program that you could take your ARPA funds, and we would match 1-to-1, dollar for dollar, for municipalities and counties, and that we would match 2-to-1 for small municipalities, anybody that received under $1 million. And my municipalities, they, I went to them and I said, look, this is a way that you can triple, money you didn't have. And they did that, and it has been impactful. Now I've just got to follow up and make sure that they've done the reports and things of that magnitude. But that was the largest, I would say, local project bill in the history of the state of Mississippi. And some other states did match or put some money up, but I think pro rata on proportion, Mississippi put more money back into the local units of government, cities and counties, in ARPA match than any state in the country.
Yeah. As I recall, was this the program that was administered through Mississippi DEQ?
We had DEQ did one side, Department of Health did another side, because we did that. You are correct, but the Department of Health actually did the rural water side. We have so many places in the state of Mississippi that are served by rural water. They are actually outside of municipal boundaries, and so we put forward, I want to say it was $350 million in one side and $450 million on the other side, but it was a significant amount of money, and I think it was the right thing to do. And the Lieutenant Governor, when he brought that idea forward and leadership on the Senate side, he literally barnstormed the state to meet with representatives of municipalities and counties, their supervisors, their mayors, their aldermen, and just said, please wait, we're going to put together a match program for you, and that you can double your money or more. And he did, and they did, but now we got to make sure they followed through on everything.
Yeah, and I recall talking about it where there was a deadline for it, and I think the city of Jackson, who stood to gain arguably the most because of the population, waited till the 11th hour.
And it appears there's many deadlines have been missed. Now, again, just because, we just had tax filing day, a few days ago, and you can ask for an extension, and you could mail in your return 3 or 4 days late, and I guess they'll do what they do. But most of the time on these programs, there's a portal. There's a timestamp. There's things that you're supposed to do. So I'm not trying to be hyperbolic or ring the alarm bell, but I can tell you this. I will be calling the folks that represent our county supervisors. I will be calling the folks that represent the municipal league and making sure they understand that the next report is due on April 30. And there are some cities that have been non-reporters for 2022, 23, and 24. And they're getting recoupment letters. They're getting letters that say, guess what? You didn't report, so send the money back. They don't have that money.
Unbelievable.
So we've got to get on top of that.
Man, oh man. Well, we'll see where all that goes. We're up against a break. You can hang around. We got to talk about the session that is over and the possibility of a special session, what we can expect there. We've got Senator Daniel Sparks in the Element Well studio. We're coming right back. Welcome back, everyone. It's middays from the Element Well studio. We're visiting with Senator Daniel Sparks. All right, so I guess the big thing with respect to the 25 session is that we sine-died without a budget. So we're all waiting to find out when are you guys going to gather back in the Capitol there to produce a budget for the state of Mississippi?
I think that's an excellent question. I told somebody the other day, when you give the keys to your car to someone else, you just have to ride when they say ride and go where they say go. So the legislature gave the keys to the governor because he's the only one that can call a special session. And while I'm not proud of the fact we didn't get a budget done, I do think there may be a silver lining in it because of all of the federal clawbacks and DOGE and the different things that are going on, is the state of Mississippi may have a better idea of what we're going to need to fund or potentially supplant when we come back. So anytime before June 30, and I thought the governor did an excellent job in his press conference assuaging any anxiety, is that, look, we're funded through June 30. And so there's no need for anybody to panic or do anything like that. Now, ultimately, people are going to sign contracts for, employees and things like that, and people are going to want to know what they have. But one of the biggest things that we probably need to focus on is what has been clawed back. Currently, that number is over $400 million. There's $138 million of ESSER funds. That was COVID-era funds that went to K-12. Lance Evans is working on that. He was on the show with Richard, I believe, earlier last week and discussing the conversations that he's had with Linda McMahon at the Department of Education. But there's some of those projects.
Lance, our superintendent.
Yes, Lance Evans. Yes, I'm sorry, the state superintendent. And they are they're actually some of those projects that are in midstream, and the question is, if the federal government does not replace that money or put it back in play, which is what the superintendent's asking, is will the state step in? Now, certainly where you've already made purchase contracts, or you've been waiting on an HVAC unit for 18 months or something to that effect, that's a huge deal. $214 million at the Department of Health. Again, all these programs may not be programs that need to continue,
sure,
but they are programs that were funded. $7.5 million at the Department of Mental Health. I can't imagine a dollar that's going to mental health that can't be well spent in this country and in this state. We had over $10 million at DFA for BEAM. Now, that's the internet programs that we have. So they're clawing back multitudes of dollars. And the one that really jumps out at you, now those are over $400 million. There's about $25 million potentially at the Department of Rehab Services that is just delayed. I had a conversation with the executive director last week. So we don't know what's frozen, what's delayed, what's stop ordered. And that's one of the things that you have to consider when you're doing your budget and when you're looking at what you have in your savings account, is what are we going to have to supplant? We also had a demand on the TANF money to pay that back. Now, I do understand there may be some negotiations going on, but at some point we're going to owe some money back on that. It could be as high as $100 million, could be less than that, depending on what we've paid back. So those are some of the major things to consider, because I think most of the budgets were close to being done. It was pretty much level funding. You had a plus up for PERS because we have an increase each year. You had a plus up for insurance. There were a few budgets that had some specific requests, but to a great degree, it was a pretty level funding year aside from those plus ups. And we were at $7.1 billion. We had 7.627, I think, was the revenue estimate for this year.
7.2 would be our general fund spending. So
that's correct. Yes.
Surplus of about 400 to 500 billion, right?
That's right. Million, and it's in the
million. Pardon me.
That's right. I wish it was billion.
I got my head on the federal government, which is always billions and trillions.
That's
so,
right.
Yeah.
But it is of some concern. Of course, we haven't reached the end of the year yet. June 30 is the end of our fiscal year. We're $8.5 million over estimate right now in revenue. But going into next year, our expected revenue is 7.5 because we've priced in. We already have the income tax going from 4.4 to 4. But you also have to price in the grocery tax
going down
reduction, $127 million. So those are good things. Tax reduction is good, but it reduces your revenue. And so therefore, you either have a spread between your revenue and expenses, which we currently do, or you cut expenses. And those are the things nobody seems to want to talk about.
So based on that, we're looking at what, $250, $300 million surplus for fiscal year 26.
If you don't add anything to Medicaid. I think the Senate position
that's my concern.
It was $150 million, I want to say, was the number that they had placed on that. So you're getting pretty close to equilibrium.
Well, even though I'm with you that we need more clarity from the federal government because we get a lot of money from the federal government. I know the lieutenant governor talks about all the time. Our true budget in the state, from a general fund perspective, if you could call it that, is what, roughly $21 billion or so.
That's correct. So we're about a third.
Right. But about a third of it comes from the state and the tax revenues collected by the state and other fees and so forth. But double that comes from the federal government, and half of that's Medicaid.
That's right, and one of the big things I think that's for me is that I voted for President Trump, and he's doing exactly what he said he would do. It just hurts.
Sure.
When it's your program, it gets real serious real fast. There is $720 million of research dollars at our IHL institutions that are currently frozen. The largest amounts of that at Mississippi State and University of Southern Mississippi, and that research is in agriculture. That research is in aqua studies, whatever all that's going on down on the blue economy with Southern. So those are serious things. Now clearly the state can't supplant all that, but one of the things we have to look at, our rainy day fund only has about $700 million in it. And while $700 million is a lot of money, that's 34 and a half days of working cash. It's one of the lowest in the country. Now, with HB1 passing and on the pathway to the elimination of the income tax, the Senate's position has always been that we need to raise that number. We were looking at 12% of revenue. That would take us up to almost $1 billion. That still wouldn't put you at a huge number, but that's reasonable. If you're going to reduce your revenues, that you would make sure your savings account was flush.
Yeah.
So that's one of the things that we're looking at is that in the special session we need to address that because I think we do need a stronger rainy day fund. I think we need a stronger rainy day fund without passing income tax elimination, but I think in light of it we certainly need to make sure that that's in place because there are core functions of government, and I think you and I agree. Those are public safety at the state level, education, and infrastructure.
That's right.
Those first three are, no muss, no fuss. And even though we have an increase in the fuel tax to pay for maintenance projects because we were stuck on a 1987 fuel tax number, the capacity projects, in other words, with the growth that you have at places like Gluckstadt, the growth you have in DeSoto County, they did Highway 7 in Oxford, they did Highway 15 up in the Tippah County area, up in where Ashley is, and you have a lot of truck traffic and things of that nature. Those are projects that are capacity, and we have funded those by either bonding or in the last few years, because we have had cash, we've actually paid cash for it. So, there's a couple $100 million of projects this year. MDOT has a 3-year plan. This is not just, they don't just throw a dart at the dartboard. They literally look at what's the greatest need. They look at, what's the most impact on economic development. And so those projects are sitting out there for us to fund this year. And I certainly do not want to borrow money.
Yeah.
I think that we've done a good job of paying down debt. And as I understood the other day, if we continue on the pathway we are with paying off our bond indebtedness, we'll free up about $100 million a year that's been going toward bond indebtedness, right. I think, in 3 years. So that's strong.
Well, one thing I don't think we're going to have clarity on that's probably the biggest area that could affect our budget is whatever the Congress passes with respect to the budget bill, because there are likely to be cuts in Medicaid. And just for the folks out there, the Medicaid program, combined federal and state money, is bigger than our general fund budget.
It is.
It's gigantic across the country. It's super big here in the state of Mississippi. Some 750,000 Mississippians enrolled in the Medicaid program. They're talking about perhaps changing the federal match, and their Republicans even are squawking about that up in Washington.
Yeah, and that was the FMAP, I think, is what they refer to that match as. And that's one of the things in trying to entice states into expanding Medicaid. They would give you an enhanced FMAP for a period of time, and there were some of us on the other side going, that period of time will pass, and when that period of time passes, can we afford that?
Yeah, 90%. State would pick up 10.
That's correct. Yep. And so now the concern is, do they even go to a block grant formula? And if they do, once again, as if you believe that's a core function, you have to say, what can we afford?
Everything's on the table is what they're saying.
Core. That's right.
Yeah,
that's right.
So we could end up with even adjustment in the FMAP on standard Medicaid, which would be a problem for the state of Mississippi.
I think that's correct.
Hang around one more segment.
Yes,
we'll keep talking. We got Senator Daniel Sparks. Stay with us. Everyone, it's middays. We are in the Element Wealth studio with Senator Daniel Sparks. A couple of texts I want to get to real quick. This is a short show Monday. We got Ricky Matthews, SuperTalk Outdoors at 12:05. Larry from McGee said, I'm proud that you and SuperTalk are getting this opportunity. I know you'll make us proud. Someone asked you, Mike and Richton, what is the big announcement? So Middays is headed to Washington, D.C. Mike will be broadcasting live tomorrow from the Eisenhower Executive Office Building, which is part of the White House complex. We're being invited to participate in what's called Radio Row. We'll have an opportunity to interview members of the cabinet and administration. That's all I know at this point. Don't know who might be around that'll be available, but this is at the request and invitation from the White House Media Affairs Executive Director. Bryn Jeffers is her name. So just want to pass that on. All right, so here we got one here. Mr. Sparks, I'm one of your neighbors up in Alcorn County. I taught school for 34 years. This is Louis. If one of my students failed to complete an assignment on time, they would face a consequence. Why is there no consequence for elected officials when they fail to complete their assignment on time? Well, the consequence is they got to go back to work at the Capitol, and many of these folks, like the senator here, they got other jobs. And I'm not asking you to feel sorry for them because they all know this. They signed up for it. But the consequence would be if we don't get a budget done and we've got to make some other accommodations, my guess is a lot of people would struggle to retain their seats.
Well, it's certainly nothing to be proud of. I agree with him, and that was exactly what I was referencing earlier on cities and counties not getting their paperwork in time for the federal government. There's going to be consequences. The difficult thing is, I think sometimes when you're down here in Jackson, and man, it was good to be home. Over the weekend, I had the weed eater and the chainsaw and the pole saw. It was just good to not be in the legislative session and do some good things and fun things. But to a great degree, you are correct. We have to come back and do the work is one issue, but the bigger issue is sometimes when you're down here in Jackson, it becomes kind of a bubble, and we play this blame game, and we think people at home care who's at fault. And the truth is, they don't care.
That's true.
We're both at fault.
That's true.
Because we were sent down here to do a job. So I agree with him. There's nothing to be proud of by not getting the budget out.
We could call it a failure, if you will, but whose feet do you put the blame at? I mean, it's kind of a team effort as to why
there's
we're
174 of us. You can blame all of us.
And I think that's fair, honestly. They just couldn't come together and get anything done. Now, my personal opinion is that much of this is a function of the way this tax reform bill went down. It just seems like that inserted a wedge even deeper between the two houses, and you being a member of one of them. You may not see it that way, but just from a casual observer, I guess I'm more than a casual observer in this job. But it just seems like that was kind of the impetus of and the driver of where we are here.
I think there's some things every year. There's some hot button issue, and I go back to the interview from 22 that you and I had. I was actually railing a little bit that if we don't get these ARPA funds out, it'll be a mistake. There was inflationary pressures. We were going to lose buying power, and I'll remind you, in 22, the threat from the other end of the hall, if we didn't pass their tax bill, was to not put ARPA out. So once again, it just repeats itself, and it's foolish, and you can go back and listen to the interview, but that's exactly what was going on. But the truth is there are extremely hardworking people on both ends of that building that try really hard to do good things for the state of Mississippi. We don't always agree, but the other thing I would reference is there are joint rules, and part of those joint rules that are adopted between the House and the Senate are a schedule. It's deadlines, and we operate off of deadlines, and we just didn't meet those deadlines.
Yeah. So a lot of folks, of course, are concerned about the cost of a special session, and I think your colleague, Senator Harkins, sent me some information about that. you guys get paid a per diem when you go back. Is that right?
That's correct. There's 174 people, and you're paying for one trip a week of driving. So for me, mileage is more than most people, just because I have to drive 245 miles one way. But then you have a per diem, which is your food, sustenance, and lodging expense. I think that's based on whatever the federal rates are.
Okay. So I think what Senator Harkin sent me, it's roughly $100,000 a day. Does that sound right to you?
I couldn't refute that.
Okay.
That seems a little high, but I'm not.
Yeah, I thought so too.
Yeah.
He was I think going to investigate the details behind that. But mileage, you don't get paid extra comp. Your legislative pay does not increase when you're in special session.
I
does
don't
it?
think so. You get a daily amount, and there may be some $40, $60 or something in there that's a daily rate, but it's primarily
per diem mileage.
That's correct.
Lodging, yeah, I got it. So let's see here. Someone says on the C Spire text line, the issue is much larger for school districts with encumbered monies on Capital X projects. I mean, that's what you were talking about. There's folks have made plans and have got agreements in place, and the funding of those is kind of in limbo at this point.
That's right, and that's across the state, because I looked at those projects, and I have some in my own district, and I don't know if we're going to look at those. Let's just assume the federal government says, no, you're not getting that $138 million. Is the state going to supplant that money? If we do, that's a project bill.
Yeah.
And it would be across the state, and I'm sure some legislators are going to say, well, why hasn't this happened already? Or others will say, well, I don't think this is a good project. So, we may have that discussion. But the same thing would be true at the $214 million at the Department of Health, the $7.5 million at mental health. I mean, it just goes on and on. And that's why I think, especially since we are now here at the tail end of April, and we may not come back into a special until May or June,
Gotcha.
We're going to have a better picture. And we'll be literally 6 months away from the session of 26. So, I would say let's be conservative, let's be smart, let's look and see, are we going to supplant some of these funds? And we can come back in 26 and address some of these other issues.
What's been the response overall, you think, to this creation of the new tier and the public employees retirement system? You, of course, heavily involved in that, and you're the liaison, right, from the Senate?
I am. I'm David Blunt, Senator Blunt, and I are the two from the Senate, and there's two from the House.
Two PERS.
We actually have a meeting tomorrow and Wednesday, so this will be our first meeting since coming back. I'm interested to talk with some of the Board of Trustee members, because, again, they voted for a plan 8-1. Which is the framework of what we put forward. I plugged in a couple more employee-friendly pieces into that tier before we actually passed it on the floor. The concern that I seem to hear most of all as I've visited with some of my superintendents, sheriffs, others, is the 35-year piece, as far as working. Of course, if someone goes to teaching at 22 years of age, they could retire at 57 years of age. And
pretty good.
As I get closer to 57, that looks younger to me. But I do understand it's different. It's a different set of benefits. But one of the things I think that's miscalculated is that the defined contribution piece could be very lucrative for folks. It could also give them freedom and mobility. And we shouldn't be afraid of mobility, because if our employees are unhappy where they are, they're probably not the best employee for us at that time. They may leave for a period of time and come back. So I do hope that it's something that's very beneficial in the future. And one of the things, I actually got a letter last week, and I'm going to go to places and talk about the PERS reforms that we did and the holistic approach that we took to it. I actually have an appointment later this month back in my home district, and I will literally advertise that and put that out. I want people to come and ask questions, and I don't want them to be filled with misinformation. But the actuaries actually sent a letter out last week that our reform to ORP is going to generate $19 million annually.
That's the optional retirement plan.
That's correct.
Right.
It will generate $19 million more dollars to pay toward the unfunded actuarial liability of PERS in fiscal 26, and it will grow by $3 to $5 million each year. 2055, it'll be $105 million more dollars going toward it. So when I told people this was a holistic approach to try to stabilize the system, honor the obligation we have to Tier 1 through 4, create a new Tier 5. This is almost $20 million a year that will go in annually, and it will grow by $3 to $5 million every year. So I'm still committed, and I think the Senate is and the Lieutenant Governor is, to find $100 million a year or so of residual revenue to go toward PERS until we reach that stabilized status. And my belief, my strong belief, is that when we start having Tier 5 retirees, this optional COLA by the legislature will be a reality. This old age COLA that Senator Bryan refers to, which I think is a fine idea, to look at people as maybe they hit 70 years of age, those things will be able to be in play. You can always bolt on and add to a program. It's the fact you can't take away. So the guarantees that were made in 99, Gerard, we were over 90% funded in 1999 in PERS.
It all looked good then.
And they voted benefits that they didn't pay for, and that helped drive us where we are today.
Yeah, I get it. Just real quick, most of the reaction I see from members of PERS is negative, in that it's not negative against Tier 5 as much as it is they want you guys to do more from a funding perspective, like increasing the employer contribution rate to the ADC, which would be, another 7% or so?
It's 25.92, and it would be up to 50% before it ever got balanced. And ask your cities and counties if they can afford it, or your school district.
Yeah,
they can't.
They're talking about it too. Senator Daniel Sparks, thanks for coming in, Senator.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. We're coming
Enjoy
right
tomorrow.
back. Thank you, man. Coming right back in the Element Wealth studio.